Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before starting the video, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and give this video a like up. £50 million Royal PRB King Charles and Prince William's estates set to rake in £50 million from NHS hospitals and schools. In a revelation that has sparked widespread debate, it was reported that King Charles IE and Prince William are set to benefit from a stream of revenue tied to their historic estates, a considerable portion of which will be funded by the National Health Service, NHS, and various schools across the country. This surprising income source, estimated to bring in a staggering £50 million, has raised questions about the relationship between the monarchy's finances and publicly funded institutions. In a time when public services are under significant strain, this arrangement has put the spotlight on the British monarchy's wealth and its historical privileges. The income in question largely comes from two key estates: the Duchy of Lancaster, controlled by King Charles, and the Duchy of Cornwall, managed by Prince William since King Charles ascended the throne. Both estates, established centuries ago, are vast land holdings with portfolios that encompass agricultural lands, forests, urban properties, and even natural resources like minerals. In addition to these diverse assets, the estates hold long-term leases with various tenants, including NHS hospitals, schools, and even social services, creating a steady stream of income for the duchies from rent and fees paid by public entities. The origins of these estates are rooted deep in British history. The Duchy of Lancaster, established in 1265, was created to provide income for the reigning monarch, while the Duchy of Cornwall was established in 1337 by King Edward II to financially support the heir to the throne. These estates have since become powerful landholding institutions, offering financial security to the British monarchy. Although the Crown no longer directly administers these estates, the revenue they generate is still available to the reigning monarch and the heir, who utilize the funds for private and official expenses. Today, these ancient holdings generate millions annually, allowing the royal family to maintain a standard of living distinct from taxpayer funding, yet still intricately tied to British public life. Among the properties managed by these estates are multiple NHS hospitals and public schools, paying for leases on land that belongs to the duchy. This arrangement has attracted scrutiny as the healthcare sector and educational institutions are notoriously underfunded and face relentless budget pressures. Many critics argue that it seems counterintuitive for institutions like the NHS to pay millions in rent to one of the wealthiest families in the country while struggling to maintain adequate staffing, resources, and facilities. In a time when hospitals are overburdened and schools are fighting to retain teachers and provide resources to students, the notion of such funds flowing into the coffers of the monarchy has raised ethical questions. In particular, NHS hospitals have been under the microscope, given that the healthcare system is often seen as a pillar of British society, revered for providing free healthcare to all citizens. Recent financial pressures have left many NHS facilities struggling to balance their books, with some even going so far as to cut staff or restrict services. Critics argue that having to pay substantial rent to the Duchy of Lancaster or the Duchy of Cornwall is an additional burden on an already stretched public health system. The same criticism extends to schools, many of which operate on limited budgets. Over the years, reports of budget cuts, inadequate facilities, and resource shortages in UK schools have been well documented. Teachers' unions have repeatedly advocated for increased funding, highlighting the negative impact of financial limitations on student outcomes. The thought of these schools channeling funds into royal estates rather than directly benefiting students and faculty has struck a nerve with parents, teachers, and the general public alike. Defenders of the arrangement point out that the duchies, as private estates, are simply operating as other landlords would, with lease agreements set in place long before the current reign. They argue that the royal family has consistently shown support for public institutions through charity work, donations, and social advocacy, and therefore should not be seen as exploiting public funds. Moreover, the revenue from the duchies allows the monarchy to reduce its reliance on taxpayer funding for royal functions and official duties, which theoretically reduces the burden on the public. The defenders argue that without the income from these estates, the monarchy would require additional public funding to support the king and Prince William in their roles. Yet for others, this argument is less convincing. Royal watchers and financial experts argue that in the modern era, it may be time to reevaluate the function and funding of the duchies. With King Charles known for his willingness to discuss modernization within the monarchy, some have proposed that he could address the controversy by voluntarily waiving fees collected from publicly funded institutions. They suggest that this gesture could reflect his often expressed commitment to social equity, particularly at a time when public services are facing a crisis. King Charles has shown a sensitivity to public opinion before, often adjusting his own lifestyle or advocating for environmental and social reforms. This could be another opportunity for him to demonstrate the monarchy's alignment with the needs of the British people. Such a move would be unprecedented but could signal a shift toward a more public-minded approach within the royal finances. Advocates for this approach argue that by renouncing fees from NHS hospitals and schools, the monarchy could showcase its commitment to supporting British institutions in a tangible way. Critics counter that such a move could set a problematic precedent, putting pressure on future royals to follow suit, potentially destabilizing the centuries-old financial structure that supports the royal family's independence from direct government funding. Another solution could be to establish a reduced or symbolic rental rate for public institutions, relieving some of the financial strain on the NHS and schools while preserving the historical income structure of the duchies. Supporters argue that this approach would strike a balance between maintaining tradition and responding to contemporary issues. Furthermore, such a measure could inspire other wealthy landowners and corporations to reassess their own relationships with public institutions, creating a ripple effect of financial relief across sectors. The British monarchy has always faced the challenge of adapting to public sentiment while preserving its traditional role, and this debate over duchy income from public institutions highlights that tension. King Charles's reign is still in its early stages, and many believe he has an opportunity to set a new tone that reflects his vision of a slimmed-down monarchy, one that may be more publicly accountable and socially conscious. The question remains whether the king will take action on this issue, or if the traditional structure of the duchies will continue as it has for centuries. Ultimately, the £50 million in revenue from NHS hospitals and schools brings to light a larger conversation about the role and responsibilities of the monarchy in modern Britain. With public services stretched thin and public trust in traditional institutions under pressure, the monarchy's approach to this issue could shape how it is perceived in the years to come. Whether by rethinking rental arrangements, making symbolic financial gestures, or simply staying the course, the royal family faces a crucial decision on how it will navigate this controversy. As the British public continues to scrutinize how wealth and power intersect with social equity, the debate over the duchies is unlikely to dissipate. Whatever the outcome, it is clear that the royal family's relationship with public institutions is under a new lens, one that calls for a balance between tradition, public expectation, and the monarchy's long-standing financial independence. ChatGPT can make mistakes. Check important info.